Marcus Sullivan stood at the window of his corner office on the 32nd floor, gazing out at the Chicago skyline as the late autumn sun painted the glass buildings in shades of amber and gold. At 52, he had everything a man could want, or so he thought. 25 years as a corporate lawyer had earned him partnership at one of the city's most prestigious firms. His Tudor-style home in Highland Park was featured in architectural magazines. His wife Caroline still turned heads at charity galas, and their 19-year-old daughter Ashley was thriving in her sophomore year at Northwestern. But lately, something felt off. Little things that he couldn't quite put his finger on. The way Caroline's smile seemed to fade when she thought no one was looking. How she'd started taking more girls' trips with her tennis friends. The hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when he entered the room. "Mr. Sullivan." His assistant Jessica's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your 3 o'clock is here." Marcus straightened his tie, pushing the nagging thoughts aside. "Send them in." The client was a pharmaceutical executive facing a wrongful termination lawsuit. As Marcus walked him through potential defense strategies, his phone buzzed with a text from Caroline, working late at the foundation. "Don't wait up. The 3rd time this week." He typed back a quick "okay" and tried to focus on the meeting. But his mind kept drifting to the changes he'd noticed in Caroline over the past few months. The new workout routine. The designer clothes. The mysterious weekend foundation retreats that left her energized and distracted. After the client left, Marcus found himself scrolling through their shared photo album. There was Caroline at Ashley's high school graduation, beaming with pride. The 3 of them on their yearly trip to Lake Geneva last summer. Their 20th anniversary dinner at Alinea just 6 months ago, where she'd looked at him with such warmth it made his chest ache. When had things started to shift? Was he imagining it all? A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was David Chen, a junior partner he'd mentored since the kid was a summer associate. "Hey Marcus, got a minute?" David looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his wedding ring, a nervous habit Marcus had noticed over the years. Something was clearly eating at him. "Of course. What's on your mind?" David closed the door and sat down heavily in one of the leather chairs. There's something you should know. I was at Gibson's last night with some clients, and I saw." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Saw what, David?" "I saw Caroline. She was with James Peterson." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. James Peterson was a hedge fund manager who served on the foundation's board with Caroline. Younger, divorced, with the kind of casual charm that Marcus had always found slightly oily. "They were just having dinner, I'm sure," Marcus said, but his mouth had gone dry. David wouldn't meet his eyes. They were in a back booth. It looked intimate. There was hand-holding. And when they left together. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I thought you should know." Marcus sat very still, his mind racing through 100 little moments that suddenly took on new meaning. The late nights. The secret phone calls. The way Caroline had mentioned Peterson's name with studied casualness at social events. "Thank you for telling me," he heard himself say, as if from a great distance. "I appreciate your discretion." After David left, Marcus sat in his darkening office, watching the city lights flicker to life. His phone buzzed again, another text from Caroline, having dinner with the event committee. "Love you." The casual life twisted in his gut like a knife. He opened his laptop and pulled up the foundation's website, finding Peterson's photo among the board members. The man was smiling confidently at the camera, one hand in the pocket of an expensive suit. Marcus stared at that smile until his vision blurred. 25 years of marriage. A lifetime of memories and trust. And now this. His finger hovered over Caroline's number. But what would he say? How do you ask your wife of 25 years if she's having an affair? How do you prepare yourself for an answer that might shatter everything you've built? Instead, he opened his bottom desk drawer and pulled out the business card he'd held onto for years, just in case. Michael Torres, private investigator. Former Chicago PD, now specializing in domestic investigations. Sometimes, Marcus had learned in his years as a lawyer, the truth was worse than not knowing. But once you started down this path, there was no turning back. With slightly trembling fingers, he picked up his phone and dialed. Michael Torres's office was nothing like the polished corporate spaces Marcus was used to. Located above a Chinese restaurant in River North, it smelled faintly of sesame oil and cigarettes. The PI himself was a weathered man in his 60s, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of Marcus's expensive suit and carefully maintained appearance. 25 years is a long time, Torres said, studying the photos Marcus had brought. You sure you want to know? Marcus's hand tightened around his coffee cup. I need to know everything. Torres nodded slowly. Standard surveillance package is 2 weeks. I'll track her movements, photograph any meetings, document times and locations. Electronic surveillance is extra, but given your wife's position at the foundation. Do it all, Marcus interrupted. Whatever it costs. He paused, throat tight. I need to know if my whole life has been a lie. The next week was torture. Marcus went through the motions at work, sat through family dinners where every smile felt like a knife twist. Caroline was as perfect as ever, asking about his cases, planning Ashley's upcoming holiday break, discussing renovation plans for their vacation home in Michigan. But now he noticed everything, the slight delay before her responses, the way her eyes never quite met his, how she always kept her phone face down on the table. Torres's first report arrived via encrypted email on a Friday afternoon. Marcus waited until everyone had left the office before opening it. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely click through the photos. Caroline entering the Four Seasons. Peterson arriving 20 minutes later. Surveillance photos through the restaurant window, intimate conversations, lingering touches. More meetings at various upscale hotels. Times, dates, duration of encounters. All meticulously documented. But it was the second part of the report that truly gutted him. Torres had dug deeper, following the money trail. Caroline had a secret account at Northern Trust, opened 6 months ago. Regular transfers from Peterson's personal holding company, consulting fees for strategic advisory services. Over $200,000 so far. She wasn't just sleeping with Peterson. She was taking his money. Marcus sat in his dark office for hours, the city lights blurring through unshed tears. Every moment of their marriage played through his mind like a movie, each memory now tainted with doubt. Had she ever loved him? Was their whole life together just a convenient arrangement for her? His phone buzzed, Ashley, sending photos from her sorority's charity event. His beautiful daughter, beaming at the camera, looking so much like Caroline at that age. The thought of her finding out, of her perfect family image shattering, made him physically ill. The next report was worse. Torres had expanded his investigation, digging into Peterson's background. The hedge fund manager wasn't just sleeping with Caroline, he had a pattern. 3 other married women in the past 5 years, all from wealthy families, all involved in charitable foundations. 2 messy divorces had been quietly settled out of court. The third husband had died in an apparent sailing accident. Your wife's not his first, Torres said when Marcus came back to his office. And based on the patterns I'm seeing, she won't be his last. This guy, he picks his targets carefully. Women with access to money, influence. Uses the charity circuit to make connections. Gets compromising information, then starts asking for favors. Investment opportunities, insider information. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Are you saying? Your wife's foundation works closely with several publicly traded healthcare companies. Peterson's fund has made some very profitable trades in that sector lately. Torres leaned forward. This isn't just about the affair, Mr. Sullivan. You're looking at potential securities fraud. The SEC would be very interested. Marcus thought about Caroline's recent behavior, the nervous energy, the distraction, the late-night phone calls. Was she being manipulated? Blackmailed? Or was she a willing participant in something much darker than a simple affair? His lawyer's mind kicked in, analyzing angles, risks, potential consequences. If the SEC got involved, it wouldn't just be their marriage that was destroyed. Caroline could face criminal charges. Ashley's trust fund, their homes, everything they'd built could be at risk. He needed to be smart about this. Careful. Strategic. As if reading his thoughts, Torres pulled out a small recorder. There's something else you should hear. My guy planted a device in Peterson's car last week. Got an interesting conversation between him and your wife. Marcus stared at the recorder, his heart pounding. Play it. Torres pressed play, and Caroline's voice filled the small office, intimate, frightened, different from anything Marcus had heard in 25 years of marriage. James, we need to talk about Marcus. The recording played in Torres's office, Caroline's voice trembling with an emotion Marcus had never heard before. James, we need to talk about Marcus. He's starting to notice something's wrong. I saw him looking through our account statements last night. Calm down, Caroline. Peterson's voice was smooth, controlled. Everything's proceeding exactly as planned. The latest trade information you provided was perfect. My team made the arrangements this morning. But what if he finds out? 25 years, James. He's not just my husband, he knows everything about the foundation, our finances. Which is precisely why we need to accelerate our timeline. Peterson's tone hardened. Remember what's at stake here. Remember what happened to Richard Morrison when he got cold feet about our arrangement. There was a long pause. Marcus felt his blood run cold at the mention of Morrison, the foundation board member who died in that sailing accident. I never agreed to. I can't. Caroline's voice broke. Marcus doesn't deserve this. You're in too deep now, darling. Those transfers to your private account. The insider information. One phone call to the SEC and your perfect life implodes. Think about Ashley. Her future. Her reputation. The recording continued, but Marcus could barely breathe. He looked at Torres, who nodded grimly. Morrison's accident wasn't an accident, was it? My sources at Chicago PD say the investigation was shut down after some heavy pressure from above. Peterson has connections, deep ones. Torres leaned back. Your wife, from what I'm hearing, she might have started this willingly, but now. She's trapped. And scared. Marcus stood, pacing the small office. His mind raced through years of memories, Caroline's dedication to her charity work, her genuine passion for helping others. Had Peterson manipulated that, twisted it into something dark? There's more, Torres said quietly. My guy found evidence that Peterson's been recording their encounters. Not just audio, video. High-end security system in his penthouse. Everything gets archived to a private server. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Blackmail material. Insurance against anyone who might threaten Peterson's operation. He's destroying her, Marcus said, his voice raw. Using her guilt, her fear, turning her into someone she's not. Torres watched him carefully. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, remembering the day he'd first met Caroline at a law school fundraiser. Her brilliant smile, her genuine warmth, her dream of making a difference in the world. The woman on that recording, frightened, compromised, trapped, that wasn't his wife. That was Peterson's victim. I need everything you have on Peterson. Every connection, every dirty deal, every skeleton in his closet. Marcus turned back to Torres. And I need you to get me access to his penthouse security system. That's dangerous territory, Mr. Sullivan. This guy's got serious protection. I'm not letting him destroy my family. Marcus's voice was steel. 25 years ago, I promised to protect Caroline. I failed her once by not seeing what was happening. I won't fail her again. That night, Marcus sat in his home office, surrounded by Torres's files. Photos of Caroline entering hotels, financial records, surveillance reports, the evidence of her fall into Peterson's web. But now he saw it differently. Saw the subtle changes in her posture over time, the growing fear in her eyes, the way Peterson's hand on her arm looked less like affection and more like control. His phone buzzed, a text from Ashley, "Dad, is everything okay? Mom seems really stressed lately. She was crying when I called earlier." Marcus stared at the message, his heart breaking for both his daughter and his wife. They deserved better than this. Better than Peterson's manipulative games, better than the devastating fallout if everything came to light. He opened his laptop, logging into the secure server Torres had set up. Peterson's penthouse security feed appeared on screen, multiple camera angles, motion sensors, archived footage. 4 weeks of planning had given them full access to Peterson's digital fortress. As he watched Peterson move through his luxury apartment, talking on his phone, Marcus felt a cold clarity settle over him. He'd spent his career working within the law, believing in the system. But Peterson had shown him the system's limitations. Sometimes justice needed a different path. His phone buzzed again, Torres sending the final piece of information they'd been waiting for. Account numbers, passwords, trading records. Everything they needed to turn Peterson's carefully constructed world upside down. Marcus opened his desk drawer, removing the burner phone he'd purchased last week. Only 3 numbers were programmed into it: Torres, his most trusted colleague at the firm, and a former client with connections to federal law enforcement. It was time to spring the trap. He dialed the first number. When Torres answered, Marcus spoke quietly but firmly, "It's time. Initiate Phase 1. As he hung up, he heard Caroline's key in the front door. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, uncertain steps, hesitating. He could picture her checking her phone, probably finding another demanding message from Peterson. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the pain and anger of the past months flow through him. When he opened them again, his reflection in the window showed a man transformed, no longer the victim of betrayal, but a hunter preparing to protect what was his. Tomorrow, James Peterson would learn a crucial lesson: some men don't just get mad when you threaten their family. They get even. Marcus watched Caroline through the kitchen window as she tended to her roses in the early morning light. Her movements were mechanical, lacking the joy she once found in gardening. She jumped slightly at the sound of her phone's notification, her hands trembling as she checked the message. The sight made his chest ache. How long had she been living in this state of constant fear? Phase 1 of his plan was already in motion. Torres's team had spent the night placing surveillance devices in Peterson's office, while a carefully orchestrated cyber attack had begun probing the hedge fund security systems. But watching Caroline now, Marcus realized the true complexity of what he faced. This wasn't just about exposing Peterson's crimes. It was about helping his wife find her way back to herself. "Dad?" Ashley's voice startled him. She'd come home from college for the weekend, claiming she was worried about her mother. Standing in the kitchen in her northwestern sweatshirt, she looked both young and impossibly grown up. "Something's really wrong, isn't it?" Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug, feeling her slight frame tremble. "Your mother's going through something difficult," he said carefully. "But we're going to help her through it. Together." "I heard her crying in her study last night," Ashley whispered. "And when I asked about the Foundation's winter gala, she nearly had a panic attack. This isn't like her, Dad." Mom's always been so strong. Strength comes in many forms, Marcus said, thinking of the recording, of Caroline's desperate attempt to protect their family even as she was being threatened. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who need our help the most. His phone buzzed, a message from Torres, Peterson's taking the bait. SEC audit team arriving at 10 a.m. The first domino was falling. Marcus had spent weeks laying the groundwork, using his legal contacts to trigger an investigation into suspicious trading patterns around companies connected to Caroline's foundation. It wasn't enough to destroy Peterson, they needed to save Caroline from any legal repercussions. Ashley, I need you to do something for me, Marcus said. Take your mother to lunch today. Keep her away from the foundation office until at least 3. Dad, what's going on? I'm trying to fix something I should have noticed much sooner. He squeezed her shoulder. Just trust me. As Ashley went to get ready, Marcus's secure phone buzzed again. A message from his contact in federal law enforcement, files received. Evidence chain established. Green light for phase 2. He watched through the window as Caroline finished with her roses, her movements growing more agitated as she checked her phone repeatedly. Another message from Peterson, no doubt. Another threat, another demand. The sound of breaking ceramic made him look up. Caroline had dropped her favorite coffee mug, and now stood staring at the shards, tears streaming down her face. Before Marcus could move, Ashley was there, wrapping her arms around her mother. It's okay, Mom, she soothed. Everything's going to be okay. Caroline broke down completely then, clinging to their daughter as if she were drowning. Marcus felt his resolve harden. Peterson hadn't just attacked his wife, he'd threatened the peace and safety of their entire family. His regular phone rang, David Chen from the office. Marcus, you need to see this. Peterson's hedge fund is in chaos. SEC teams everywhere, trading suspended. And there's rumors about a federal investigation into the foundation. Keep me posted, Marcus said calmly, watching as Ashley led her mother upstairs. Everything was proceeding according to plan. By the end of the day, Peterson's carefully constructed house of cards would begin to collapse. But then David said something that made Marcus's blood run cold, there's something else. Peterson just called an emergency board meeting at the foundation. 3 o'clock today. Mandatory attendance for all board members. Marcus checked his watch. 9:47 a.m. If Caroline attended that meeting. His secure phone buzzed again, Torres, urgent. Peterson's making moves. Multiple cash transfers to offshore accounts. Plane fueled and waiting at private airstrip. The bastard was planning to run. And he was going to try to take Caroline with him. Marcus looked at the stairs where his wife and daughter had disappeared. The sound of Caroline's muffled sobs still echoed through the house. For weeks, he'd plotted his revenge with surgical precision, thinking he had considered every angle. But watching his wife break down in their daughter's arms had shown him the human cost of this game. He couldn't wait for his careful plan to unfold anymore. Peterson was cornered, desperate, and still had leverage over Caroline. A desperate man with nothing to lose was the most dangerous kind. His finger hovered over Torres's number. They had a contingency plan for this scenario, but it was risky. Extremely risky. If anything went wrong. Another sob echoed from upstairs, followed by Ashley's gentle voice trying to comfort her mother. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the strong, vibrant woman who had captured his heart 25 years ago. The woman Peterson had systematically broken down through manipulation and fear. He dialed Torres. Initiate Delta Protocol. Now. That's dangerous territory, Sullivan. If we move too fast. We don't have a choice anymore. Marcus's voice was ice. Peterson's not taking anything else from my family. As he hung up, a text came through on Caroline's phone, lying forgotten on the kitchen counter. Marcus picked it up, his hands steady as he read Peterson's message. Board meeting at 3. Come alone. Time to end this. The Foundation's board room felt different today. Smaller. Darker. Caroline sat alone at the massive oak table, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished surface, like prison bars. She jumped at every sound, every footstep in the hallway. Upstairs, though she didn't know it, Marcus and Torres watched through the security feed. They'd arrived an hour earlier, their team already in position. But seeing Caroline there, so vulnerable yet still carrying herself with quiet dignity, Marcus felt his carefully constructed plan crumbling. She's stronger than you think, Torres said softly, noting Marcus's pained expression. Look at her posture. She's scared, but she's not broken. The door opened, and James Peterson strode in. Gone was his usual smooth confidence. His designer suit was slightly rumpled, his movements sharp with barely contained panic. The SEC raid had rattled him more than they'd anticipated. We need to leave. Now. Peterson's voice was harsh. I have a plane waiting. All the arrangements are made. Caroline didn't move. I'm not going anywhere with you, James. Don't be stupid. He slammed his hands on the table, making her flinch. They're closing in. The SEC, the feds, everything we've built is falling apart. But I can protect you. We can start fresh somewhere else. Like you protected Richard Morrison. Caroline's voice was barely a whisper. Peterson went very still. What did you say? I know what you did to him. What you've been doing to all of us. Her voice grew stronger. Using the Foundation, manipulating vulnerable women, destroying families. Careful, Caroline. Peterson's tone was deadly quiet. Think about Ashley. About her future. One phone call and everything comes out, the insider trading, the money laundering, your role in all of it. Upstairs, Marcus reached for his phone, ready to signal the team. But Torres held up a hand, pointing to the screen. Something was happening. Caroline stood slowly, her spine straightening. I've thought about Ashley. About the example I'm setting for my daughter. About the kind of person I want her to see when she looks at her mother. She reached into her bag, pulling out a thick file. This is everything, James. Every transaction, every threat, every recording. I've spent months documenting it all. Peterson lunged for the file, but Caroline stepped back. It's too late. Copies have already been sent to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet in Chicago. You stupid bitch. Peterson's mask of sophistication shattered completely. He reached for her throat. But Caroline was ready. The self-defense classes she'd been secretly taking for months kicked in. She twisted away, her elbow connecting with his solar plexus. Peterson stumbled back, gasping. The door burst open. FBI agents flooded the room, led by Marcus and Torres. As they secured Peterson, Marcus rushed to Caroline, wrapping her in his arms. I'm so sorry, she sobbed into his chest. I thought I could handle it alone. Thought I could protect everyone by playing along. But then I saw what it was doing to Ashley, seeing me so afraid. You did protect us, Marcus whispered, holding her tighter. You were so brave, gathering evidence, staying strong. I just wish I'd seen it sooner, wish I'd found a way to help. You did help. Caroline pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. These past few weeks, feeling you there, seeing your quiet support even when you must have been so angry, it gave me the strength to keep going, to finish documenting everything. As Peterson was led away in handcuffs, ranting about his connections and making threats, neither Marcus nor Caroline paid him any attention. They were lost in their own moment of healing, of rediscovering each other. Mom. Dad. Ashley stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd insisted on coming, on being there for both her parents. Caroline opened her arms, and Ashley ran into them. The three of them stood there, holding each other, their family bond stronger than any darkness Peterson had tried to create. Later, as they sat in Torres's office reviewing the evidence Caroline had gathered, Marcus felt a profound sense of awe at his wife's courage. While he'd been planning elaborate revenge, she'd been methodically building a case, protecting others who might have become Peterson's victims. "There's something else you should see," Torres said, sliding over a final file. Caroline wasn't just gathering evidence on Peterson. She was working with a support group for other survivors of financial and emotional abuse. She's been helping them rebuild their lives, using her experience to create a safe path out. Marcus looked at his wife with new eyes. The woman he'd feared was broken was actually stronger than ever. She'd turned her pain into purpose, her trauma into a tool for helping others. But there was still one piece of unfinished business. One final truth that needed to be faced. Caroline squeezed his hand, seeming to read his thoughts. "It's time to tell Ashley everything. The whole truth. She deserves to know what real strength looks like." As Marcus nodded, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. The first news stories about Peterson were breaking. And this was only the beginning. 6 months later, Caroline stood at the podium of the Northwestern University Women's Center, her voice steady as she addressed the packed auditorium. Marcus and Ashley sat in the front row, their presence giving her strength as she shared her story publicly for the first time. "Abuse doesn't always leave visible bruises," she said, her words touching hearts across the room. "Sometimes it comes dressed in designer suits, hidden behind charitable donations and social status. Sometimes it whispers instead of shouts, making you doubt your own worth, your own reality." The foundation had been transformed in the wake of Peterson's arrest. Caroline now led a new initiative supporting survivors of financial and emotional abuse, turning the organization's resources toward healing and empowerment. The money that had once fueled Peterson's schemes now funded counseling programs, legal aid, and emergency assistance for women rebuilding their lives. After her speech, in the quiet of their home garden, Caroline tended to her roses, not with the frightened, mechanical movements of before, but with gentle purpose. Ashley sat nearby, working on her psychology thesis inspired by her mother's journey. "I keep thinking about all the little moments," Ashley said softly. "The times I saw you struggling but didn't understand. The way you never stopped trying to protect me, even when you were drowning yourself." Caroline set down her gardening tools, turning to face her daughter. "That's what I want you to remember most from all of this, sweetheart. Not the darkness, but the light we found within it. The strength we didn't know we had until we needed it." Marcus watched them from the kitchen window, remembering the day 6 months ago when they'd sat Ashley down and shared the full truth. The pain in their daughter's eyes had been devastating, but it was followed by something remarkable, a deepening understanding of her mother's courage, her father's unwavering love, and the complex reality of healing from trauma. The doorbell rang, Sarah Morrison, Richard's widow, arriving for their weekly support group meeting. What had started as informal gatherings of Peterson's survivors had grown into a powerful network of women helping others find their way back to themselves. In the living room, transformed into a warm meeting space, Caroline and Sarah greeted the other women, each at different stages of their healing journey. Some were just beginning to recognize the patterns of manipulation in their lives. Others, like Caroline, were further along, offering guidance and understanding to those who followed. Marcus had learned to give them space during these meetings, but tonight Caroline had asked him to stay. As he listened to the women share their stories, he was struck by the profound resilience of the human spirit. These weren't broken victims, but warriors who had found their voice, their strength, their way back to light. Later that evening, as they prepared dinner together, a simple ritual that had become sacred in its normalcy, Caroline paused, touching Marcus's arm. "I found my old journals yesterday," she said quietly. "From the early days with Peterson. Reading them now, I can see how gradually it happened. How he identified my deepest insecurities and used them against me. But you know what else I saw? Little moments of resistance. Times when some part of me knew something was wrong and started gathering evidence, even before I consciously decided to fight back. Marcus pulled her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. You never stopped being you, he whispered. Even in the darkest moments, your core strength was there. We never stop being who we are, she agreed. We just sometimes need reminding. You and Ashley, you didn't just want revenge against Peterson. You wanted to help me find myself again. And you did, by believing in me even when I'd stopped believing in myself. The sound of Ashley's laughter drifted in from the garden, where she was sharing stories with Sarah's teenage daughter Emma. The two girls had formed a deep bond, supporting each other through their family's healing journey. Mom! Dad! Come look at this! Ashley called excitedly. They stepped out into the evening light. The rose garden that had once witnessed Caroline's silent tears was now in full bloom, a testament to renewal and growth. Ashley pointed to a newly opened bud, a rare blue rose Caroline had been nurturing for months. It's beautiful, Marcus said, but he wasn't looking at the flower. He was watching his wife and daughter, their faces illuminated by the setting sun, their bond stronger than ever. Caroline touched the delicate blue petals. Life finds a way to bloom, even after the harshest winter. But it needs nurturing, patience, and love. She looked at her family, her eyes bright with tears of gratitude. Just like healing. As they stood together in their garden, surrounded by the beauty they'd reclaimed from darkness, Caroline realized that their story wasn't really about Peterson's betrayal or his eventual downfall. It was about the quiet courage it takes to rebuild, the strength found in vulnerability, and the profound power of unconditional love. The sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of hope. In the growing darkness, the Sullivan family held each other close, their love a lighthouse guiding others toward healing, their story a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade, but they can become markers of survival, badges of courage, reminders that even in our darkest moments, we are never truly alone. And sometimes, the deepest healing comes not from seeking revenge, but from reclaiming our own light and using it to illuminate the path for others.